Michael Porter Jr. came out the other day and he had something very interesting to say. Speaking on Twitch, he called Nikola Jokic the greatest of all time. Quote, the reason I say that is because he could have won MVP 5 years in a row. Can you name another player who could have won MVP 5 years? End quote. So obviously, this is a bold statement from MPJ. And at first glance, I just kind of brushed it off. I didn't think much of it. I thought, this is obviously somebody who is very close to Jokic. Of course, he played with him for so many years. And Jokic set him up so many great times, especially a great shooter like MPJ. Of course, that connection is going to be great. Of course, he's going to think Jokic has what it takes to be the greatest. But I didn't think much more of it than that. I consider it another one of these kinds of things where you hear something from a player and you get where they're coming from. Of course, you understand because they've played the game at the highest level. They know what they're talking about, but sometimes that goes over the edge a little bit and you just don't really think what they're saying in the instance of something like this is really possible, really feasible. You respect it, but you don't agree with it. And that's where I was. But then I started thinking, I started running my mind. I kept thinking about what MPJ said. Could Nikola Jokic ever be the greatest of all time, the best to ever step foot on a basketball court, above Michael Jordan, above LeBron James? Could Jokic ever be there? And my answer to that is no. But it is a testament to the level of player that Jokic is that I did, just for one moment, stop and pause and think about what Michael Porter had to say. And I stopped to think about the kind of player that Jokic is, and just how great he is, and how that stacks up among legends. Number 15 is going to go down as an all-time great. One of the best bigs ever, one of the greatest passers ever, and that in itself is something to be celebrated. Let's think about that, man. There are so many players that have stepped foot in the NBA. You think about a 15-man roster with 30 teams, that's 450 guys in any given season, not counting free agents, not counting additions, not counting two-way players, just straight up 15-man roster. That's a lot of players. And then you think about the history of the game. For so many seasons, there have been so many guys to step foot on an NBA court, to shoot an NBA basketball, to face NBA competition in real time. Most of them get forgotten. Some of them become all-stars. Some become legendary, though. Some of them, they begin to make all-NBA teams. They begin to win MVP awards. And they begin to etch their names into the history books. These are the guys that you can start to call superstars. These perennial all-NBA team members. These guys always in MVP discussions. And maybe they just win one. That in itself is a massive, massive accomplishment. But to go beyond that is something even more incredible. And that's precisely what Nikola Jokic has done. A 3-time MVP winner. And he very well could add more than that. Think about that heated race with Joel Embiid, which Embiid ultimately won. A lot of people at the time, and especially in revisionist history, they look back and say, that should have been Jokic's. So to be that kind of player, beyond just one-time MVP, but a multiple-time MVP, and a frontrunner for many consecutive years, that is something truly special. And that's where Nikola Jokic is. He is sitting only amongst NBA legends in history now. With the amount of MVP awards he has won as a 3-time winner, he is part of a group of 9 players: Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, LeBron James, Wilt Chamberlain, Moses Malone, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Nikola Jokic. That is more than elite status to be in. That is more than legendary status to be in. That is greatest of all time kind of status to be in. We're talking about the 2 GOATs, MJ and LeBron, the best passer we've ever seen in Magic Johnson, the best point guard we've ever seen. And guys, centers who were the stuff of legend, like Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. Of course, we know the stories about Larry Bird as well, the best Celtic in many people's eyes to ever wear that green and white. And right there, among them all, is Nikola Jokic. And he is playing in an era in which many people think the talent level is higher than it's ever been. And in spite of that, he has been undeniably dominant, undeniably the best in the world, or at least top 3, no matter how you want to, put Giannis, put SGA in there. He is undoubtedly a front runner in that discussion, and he has been for years now. That's where Jokic is, and that's incredible in its own right. We may not be able to call him the greatest ever, but he is up there. Top 20 ever, top 10 by the time his career's over, perhaps, with the caliber of player that he is. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the kind of player that Jokic is. Jokic is one of the best centers of all time, and it's not for the reasons that most big men are. He's not necessarily a freak track and field kind of athlete like Wilt or Bill Russell. He's not one of the best scorers ever like Kareem. He's not a dominant force that can back down anyone like Shaquille O'Neal. He does it his own way. At that center spot, where he's expected to be a play finisher, he is a playmaker. And based off what we have seen from him in his career, he is not just one of the best passers at that big man spot in the history of the game. He is one of the best passers in NBA history as a whole. We're talking point guards here. Nikola Jokic gives even the best a run for their money. And when he's doing that at that 5 spot, that adds a whole new dynamic to his game that not many other centers in NBA history can say that they have. And that makes him unique, and that makes him almost unguardable. I would argue that he is unguardable for the most part. Because if you double him, he is going to find the open man. But if you don't, he's going to put up some points too. In order to stop number 15, you have to be like the Minnesota Timberwolves. You have to create a team with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, 2 centers in your starting lineup, just to stop him with your size. He is so great that teams were constructed to stop him and him alone. And that era that he's playing in is a little bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, you can look at those 3 MVPs and say that that's even more impressive than somebody of yesteryear winning 3 because of the talent in the league, the way that there's so many guys vying to be the most valuable player. But at the same time, I do think it takes away one key thing, and that is championships, because he only has one. And in this era of talent, you don't know how long you're going to be able to be a contender. And we've seen that with the Nuggets. They were a great team when they won, and they've continually been a great team. But there's so many great teams now. And so it's harder and harder to add that many championships to your resume in this current era. But rings, when we discuss all-time players, matter so much because they are a marker of who the best player in the world was on the best team in the world. You know, you think of Jordan winning 6, you think of Bill Russell winning 11, LeBron winning 4, Kobe winning 5. They are markers because they represent a dominant team that continually won over and over, led by an all-time great player. Jokic, on the other hand, only has one. I think that's the biggest knock on his GOAT case. And this is also why it's just so hard to compare eras. But I think that resume, that championship resume, is the one thing holding Jokic back from being the greatest. As for MPJ's reasoning, I don't necessarily love that either, because there's other guys like MJ, like LeBron, you can point to and say they could have won for 5 straight years. If it wasn't voter fatigue, I would point to and absolutely say that. So, I would not jump to the conclusions to call Nikola Jokic the greatest ever. But I would say that he is undoubtedly an all-time great. It could finish his career as a top 10 player. Maybe that's a hot take. But he has that kind of talent. He is that dynamic of a weapon, and he is that unstoppable at times. Nikola Jokic, not the greatest ever, but one of the best players that we've ever seen, undoubtedly.